Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lighthouse. We are thrilled to be on air this evening, and we have a wonderful show tonight. I am your host, Tina Godin, and with me also hosting are Shannon Johnson and Natasha Scott. I know all of us are so excited to have our special guest, Ursula Lentine, on the show with us. A little bit about Ursula. Ursula Lentine has facilitated over 4,800 individual healing sessions and has worked with thousands more in groups. She helps to bring emotional, physical, and spiritual balance to her clients' lives through subconscious work. Reverend Lentine, a licensed minister with Centers for Spiritual Living, a practitioner of eternal family systems, certified associate pranic healer, and Dr. Springer and she collaborate to bring healing to his patients. Ursula is inviting you to a weekly Twin Hearts meditation that blesses the planet with loving kindness. She loves new clients and referrals, so see what you can do to help out. Ursula answers the call to assist clients with the human longing for peace, clarity, and wellness. This is a part of her life's purpose. Welcome, Ursula.
Thank you, Tina. I think you said that intro the best out of everybody. I could tell, yeah, that it was coming from your heart and you took time. Sometimes people just like blah, 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 blah. But you were like, hey, I really want to understand this and this feels important. So I really appreciate with the kind of heart that you read all that with. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. So tell us, I mean, there's so much to go over in such a short amount of time, but I want to just kind of jump back and go a little bit back in time to just to give the audience, give the listeners just a little bit of background in how you just, came into this. I mean, what is it that was your calling?
That's a great question. And it was not obvious at the time. So when I was in the middle of my path, I looked back like, how did I get here? And I realized in the second grade, I had a spiritual experience at church. It was the lighting and the music. It was at communion time. And I was only in second grade, and so I wasn't taking the communion. But something just lined up and it hit me. And I could feel the presence of God. And I started bawling. I was just crying. And my little girlfriend next to me started crying. She just cried because I cried. I asked her a few years ago, did she remember? And she's like, no, I don't remember that. But I could just feel the presence of God. That's the best way I could say it. And I knew that this physical world, there was something more to it.
Right.
As a child, I asked a lot of questions and I participated in our Catholic upbringing, all of that. And then 7th and 8th grade came and I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't understand this. I don't understand that. The principal herself came to my classroom, called me out, cornered me in the library. And she's like, young lady, you're asking too many questions. And I'm like, I thought that's how we learned. Because I'm a little, smart mouth. And I wasn't trying to be smart, but I was asked, like, if you're going to corner me, then I'm going to be like, I'm not going to sit here and shut up. And I said, well, why is asking questions a problem? I'm trying to learn. And she says, you're disturbing the other children. And I said, I know that that's not a fact because on the playground, we have discussions based on the conversations I'm bringing up. And she kind of looked at me and I said, but, Sister Mary Jean Louise, now that we're here, can you please answer some of my questions? And she was like, okay. So, and then we got to the point, God works in mysterious ways. And I was like, really? So my whole high school time, I was like black. I hated everything and everybody. I felt like I was lied to, that whole teenage thing where you're like, you're not telling me the truth. And I don't appreciate not being told the truth. And the world is a much uglier place than you guys have been painting. So thanks, but no thanks. And now where does that leave me? Right? Because if everything's a lie, maybe I'm a lie too. So I was very upset. So when I broke out at 18, I moved to California pursuing my modeling career. I had a contract with the elite. So I just went from like this little town in Michigan to, ta-da, Los Angeles. And I was like, great, now I can really see what's going on. And I dug in and I studied everything spiritual I could get my hands on. Went to every conference, every meeting, met some pretty good weirdos and met some really legit things. And I studied. I happened to have a great cousin, like a third cousin, who taught metaphysics. So I was staying at their home as I was getting established, and his teachings were solid, were valid. I would learn. I'd come back. So I started taking class with him. I took 4 years of formal study with him as I continued to do all these other studies. And that's my foundation, that teaching, metaphysics. So physics is the laws and principles that govern the physical world. Metaphysics is beyond the physical world. What are the laws and principles that govern the world, and how can I use them to my advantage and not work against them? So it was that journey that I've always been on, basically since the second grade, that has just grown and grown and grown and grown over the years.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so amazing. So interesting too. And you had that, in listening to you, you had that desire, that just real deep desire to understand, you know, everything, the world around you, the unseen. And so that there's definitely a push there from spirit, and to have you learn all of those things. And so I find it interesting that, you know, you go out to LA, in such a big city, and, you know, where everything is so open, you know, and then here you are, open as you are to receiving. And so that's fantastic. So the other question that I have too is how, like, what, was there a defining moment at all where you were like, you know, this is what I want to do with healing, or this was my calling? Was there something that happened in your life, or that defining moment?
Absolutely. So I lived and worked in Los Angeles. I did modeling and professional acting as well. Fell in love with this amazing man, and he said, I lost everything in my last business deal. He was like this person with a home in Malibu and a Gulfstream 2, whatever. And he lost all of that. And he said, the only thing left I have is an island in the Caribbean, and I'm going to build an empire, but I needed somebody to build it with. Would you come with me? And I had landed on my feet many times. So I was aging out at the ripe age of 25. I was aging out of the modeling industry, and I was ready for my next adventure. So we moved out there, and it was third world country. We had 5 hurricanes. Like, it was one disaster after the other. It was miserable. And I was back in my dark ages, right? It was really terrible. 9/11 hit, and it woke me up out of the stupor, out of the numbness, out of, just no identity, like nothing. I had forgot exactly everything who I knew myself to be. Then I landed in Atlanta. My sister said, come live with us for a while. We'll get you started. And I said, okay, I am not making any more mistakes with my life. That's it. Then I found, it took me 3 years to find my centers for spiritual living, that metaphysics, the same teaching again. And I just worked my butt off. I worked very, very hard, because I said all of my energy that I put into my marriage, I should have put that into my own self, because a marriage can fall apart, but I'm not going to fall apart towards myself. So I said, I'm going to work for myself again. And I decided to do real estate, because real estate is a great way to start your own business, because it teaches you how to work for yourself. And then from there, many realtors branch off and then just do their own thing. Well, 2008 hit, the great crash, right? The real estate and the bankers crash. And I said, this isn't funny. I worked so hard to build my business, day and night. I'd set the alarms off at midnight trying to leave the offices because I wasn't paying attention what time it was. And I built a great career, but then the rug got pulled from underneath me. I said, okay, look, God, universe, this is not funny at all, because I felt like I failed again with the marriage, and then now with the career. So I said, you know what, if things can fall apart like this, I might as well live my life doing what I absolutely love to do. And it's all this spiritual stuff that I do for me, for myself. So I've just figured out a way to educate myself as formally as possible, because I'm totally behind education. So whatever my craft is, whatever my thing is, I want to have the top education and continue to do that. And I do. So I studied metaphysics. I got my ministerial license at that time because I was already doing it. So by 2008, I was a minister. What that means, 6 years of study, and studied pranic healing, took class after class after class. And I'm at the point where I teach now. And then I went into Arhatic, which is a whole nother level. And then I said, okay, here we go. And I jumped in with both feet. So by 2010, I was fully invested in my spiritual career that I do now.
Oh, that's amazing. As you're telling me this, the chills are just going up my arms and up my spine. And, you know, you took that leap of faith and you surrendered, and, you know, you didn't give up. You just, you know, kept going. And it, you know, what a strong person that you are, just, you know, to just keep going like that. And, you know, just keep listening to that call from spirit to do what, you know, what your soul wants to do, and to acknowledge that, and to, you know, go ahead forward. And now you're helping others. And so it's such a beautiful thing to do, is to be of service to others, and also to ourselves, you know. And so that's amazing. That's amazing. So what exactly is pranic healing? What is that?
Good. That's a great question. Prana is the word from India that is chi. So Asia, the word is chi. India, the word is prana. America, we say life force energy. Spirit is what you guys have been using on this call. So pranic healing is using chi energy, life force energy, source, God, whatever your language is, for healing purposes. I just spent a year doing a quantum class. So it was 22 ministers, Centers for Spiritual Living, metaphysical ministers, led by another minister, and we studied quantum spirituality. And it was every week for 3 hours. Like, it was my doctorate class in the metaphysical movement. And my mind was blown, because I understood pranic healing on another level, because I've been doing quantum healing work this whole time, but didn't understand to the degree and the level of energy that, you know, now I have a really crisp understanding that it's using healing in a quantum field. So in quantum, the energy, if you just break down energy, wave and particle. So a particle, we could say, is our physical form, and wave is the energy, and emotion is a wave. Our circulatory system, the blood goes through. Our air, respiration. Okay, so you can see how many waves are within our thinking anyway. When we love somebody, that's a wave of energy. When we feel afraid, that's a wave of energy. So if I speak a word, that's like a particle. It's a thought form. If I worry about something all the time, it becomes a thing of itself, and that becomes a form. It's a wave, but to me, the particle in the particle is a concentrated wave, and it turns into a thing. So if I have a negative thought form and it's going over and over and over again, I'm like, oh, stop thinking that. Oh, here it is again. Oh, stop thinking that, right? So then it grows more energy that it has. The more anger I have towards it, grows. The more fear I have towards it, grows. So if I can say, okay, my wave is going to be love and compassion, it can't grow. It's opposite. So in pranic healing, we go into the wave world and work on disintegrating or untangling the particle. So if there's a thought form that turns into a mental situation, turns into an emotional situation, and now I'm embodying it. Now, if it's chronic and it turns into a disease, one, a discomfort, but two, even eventually a disease, now that's a concentrated particle. So in pranic healing, we bring in the waves to disintegrate and dissolve the particle.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That you explained that so well. And I mean, I'm even thinking of my own self and thoughts that I'll have. And you're right. I mean, it just gets bigger and bigger. It'll come back and, and I'm thinking, I thought I cut those cords. I thought I got rid of that. And, no, not so much. So I love the way you broke that down and explained that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
And Shannon's a pranic healer, so she knows how to use this technology.
Right. Yeah. Shannon, do you have any questions? And I know you and Ursula have, met before and you've learned from Ursula as well. So I'd love to hear.
Yes, I took, my husband and I both went down and we took her pranic healing class for beginners. And even though I'm a Reiki master and I have studied energy in different ways and healing in different modalities, it was like pranic healing added a whole bunch of the pieces that I didn't realize were missing.
Yes, great way to put it.
Because every technique has its own mastery and its own way of function. But when we really start to look at them, they all have parts that are like little holes in there. And then they end up filling that in when you look at some of the other modalities. That was one of the things I really loved about learning pranic healing under Ursula, was that she filled in some of those gaps just through the teaching that it has. So it actually has taken my healing ability, and the way that I'm looking at people when they're coming to me has changed as well, because I'm scanning in more areas than I was aware of before. Even though I was looking, I wasn't seeing all of the things that I could see. And I really love her internal family systems work. We've done several sessions together. And I have to say, without Ursula's guidance in those sessions, we had a doozy last time that was like 3 sessions in one. We had done like parts, I had this real big thing. We did parts in a couple of sessions. And then I was like, I'm trying to write this book and I'm stuck right here at that point. We've done all this work on all these parts of it. And I can't get it out. Ursula, help. And we sat down and we did a session, and oh my goodness, they were in my mind. Poor Ursula was having to deal with them because we were working on the one thing, and the next thing they're opening up closets and they're throwing boxes of stuff out now. And I had to just laugh because I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea these other areas were still sitting there. And so, through the guidance and acknowledging it, and then through that process, my goodness, I felt like 50 pounds went off my shoulders, and probably about 3 truckloads of garbage came out of my mind into the fire pit, to finally be clear. And I actually sat down and finally wrote that whole section that had been waiting and choking. Every time I thought about it, I would choke and have anxiety. And I just finally got it all out. So I'm like, yay.
Yay, that's wonderful.
So yeah, she definitely, I love Ursula, how, if you can talk a little bit with the ladies, one of the things I really found interesting with the internal family systems work was how your abilities come into play there, because we're in one modality, and I recognize the teaching and the format portion of it, but then there's a point that we get to where you are so attuned in your clairs that you're picking up things that people aren't speaking about. How did you find the ability of marrying them? Because I know you do it in pranic healing, and that's so energy based, but the internal family systems is so emotionally based. I'm curious how you managed that one.
That's a fantastic question, and that's a healer's question, right? Because like a normal person wouldn't even know to ask that question. So I really appreciate speaking with fellow healers. I can tell both of you, Tina and Natasha, are also, vibrating consciously. So it's because I've done a hell of a lot of work on my own self, right? After the marriage, because I studied when I was in Los Angeles, studied to the point that I was executing. I would get auditions and I would book jobs all the time because I was using the spiritual teachings. So I was at a execution level, right? I was executing the teaching. So I was like firing. Then I took a different turn, not wrong turn, because then every all turns out lovely, la. Okay, then, and then dark ages, whatever. I had to crawl back. So I was like, well, this time I must have missed something. So this time I'm going to get it right. So I studied very diligently, very hard, picked up the metaphysics, and then my brain is spiritual, but I'm also super logical. Like I have a friend, he's a neuroscientist. I don't even know what he is, but we go at it. And he's like, how do you know what you know? I've studied for years. I'm on forums. Like I talk to doctors and, scientists, like, and you're right here with me. Like, how does that happen? I said, because I've studied my spiritual laws and principles, and it is breaking down scientifically. And in the internal family systems in my spiritual living center community, there was another congregant there, and he was studying internal family systems. And he said, I want to do a case study with somebody voluntarily before I really put it out into my normal practice. Like free therapy, yeah, I'll take it. And he and I would go in and we would do, instead of 1 hour session, we would do 3.5 hour sessions every Friday in his basement, because we would just get going and it was so fascinating. And he's like, okay, we're supposed to do like 1 hour, and it's supposed to be like every other week, so you can integrate. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'll see you next Friday. So I did 4 years of work in 1 year, because that's how I am. I'm very proactive. I'm very trusting. I'm very, open, and I'm hungry. I want to learn the truth. And I continue to work with fellow practitioners on my own work. I do prayer and meditation all the time. There's no TV, there's no microwave. I don't eat meat. I don't swear as much as possible. I keep it as clean as I can. And I have really healthy friends. I just keep it really clean, and I'm always working on myself. I'm always like, why would I say that? What am I thinking here? What feelings are happening here? I'm not in a relationship. I don't have children. This is really a life of service. So that's where I'm coming from, Shannon. I'm bringing all of that to each session. And my ego is not allowed in my sessions because I don't have time for that. These people are paying, they're trusting, they're bringing their garbage to me, and I'm coming in to clean with my heart. So I'm coming in a prayer. A session is a prayer for me. So if a client comes to me and says, I'm like, hold on, right? And then I have to dip into my prayer world and go look at my files. Like, what are they talking about? So it's a prayer for me. I'm in a place of prayer. And because of, like you said, Shannon, my clairs, I'm really there because I understand quantum and I can time trip. So I'm really back in the living room with the father, age 5. Like, I'm there. I can sense, I can feel, I can say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on over here? And then they'll say, oh, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. And then I have my guides in spirit saying, okay, check this, check that, ask about this. So because I've developed that trust, that inner trust, I'm being guided throughout the system, and I'm not afraid. I've said all my demons, all my dragons, I do exorcisms. I am not afraid. So I go in there solid. So nothing's going to scare me. I'm not in there, timid, like what's going to happen next. I've done thousands of sessions. I am not afraid. Bring it to me, because I don't want you to be suffering under the circumstance anymore. So that's how I show up, and that's how I can hold that kind of space and do a session like you, because I can meet the client wherever they are at. And when they're fed up, when they're done, when they're up against the wall, with this place of surrender, I say, like, when one cheek's against the gravel, there's a boot on the other side, there's blood dripping down. you're like tapping the mat like the wrestlers do. Like, I surrender. Okay. I'm there to pick up the pieces and say, great, you're prime, you're ripe. Let's open this fruit up and consume what the good is there and release, the stuff that's holding us back. Most of the time, this is inherited stuff. And we're like, why do I have this addiction? Why do I have this situation? Why do I keep bringing this kind of person in my life? Because you're dealing with generations of stuff. And you're the brave one in your family to say, that's enough. We're not doing this anymore. We heal out generations backwards and forwards.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I was just going to ask you what your process is for manifesting what you would like to see and experience every day.
Great. Excellent question. You guys are like, I love answering your questions because they're so good. So I have one of my mentors. Her name is Joyce Reynolds. And Reynolds, RENNOLDS, like the foil. And you can go to her website. She's just passed, but she's more prevalent now, in that realm than she was even physically. I have her picture all over my house and all of that. So in Metaphysics, the Centers for Spiritual Living, Ernest Holmes created a thing called a treatment, but she's ramped it up better, and it's called scripting. So scripting is writing in a specific journal that you've dedicated. First thing in the morning is usually a good time because you're not completely awake yet and you're still in that kind of etheric space. And you write what you want to create as if it's happened already. Okay, so my tiny house, I have a tiny house in the back. The frame is there, but it's not built out. My tiny house is fully booked. You see, there's no plumbing in there. There's no electricity in there. No, it is fully booked. I had a great contractor. He loves me. He helped me do everything. The permits went perfectly. The house is designed. It's in magazines, all of that. And I say it as if it's already happened. So the thing is, it's not a mental deal, because in order to create, there's the egg and the sperm. So it's a two for one, right? The wave and the particle. So emotion and the mind, the objective kind of ideas are there, right? So my emotions, I can't just write like this is what it's going to be and be like that. It's going to be flat. Mm-hmm. My emotions have to go in it and give it energy to build and to grow and to manifest. My emotions are going to convince me like, yeah, of course. I might have to write it every day. Sometimes, and we're talking about class, like people are shaking with their pen, like, can I really ask for this? Could I really do this? And then by the end, you're like, rah, 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 and you're like, hey, paper, you're responding to me. Because what that does is it concretizes, right? Mm-hmm. So one's imagination, fantasy, and then you're bringing it down and you're like emotioning, and you're like, well, yes, of course it could go down like this and I could like that. And so it's not just fantasy, like, hey, angels, come on, do this for me. So we, in metaphysics, we also say treat and move your feet. So do the prayer work and what can happen logically. What do I need to do to put this into action? So it's using the logical mind and the spiritual mind and putting it together along with the emotions to say. So that's saying, oh, I'm worthy, right? That's a big piece of manifestation. Am I worthy to receive that? Because if not all of you are convinced, one of you will sabotage and say, no, who you think you are? And you're like, no, I have $1 million. No, you don't. Right? So you can't have that inner conflict because it won't manifest. So all of our parts have to be in a line. So that scripting, you can look up Joyce Reynolds, and on her page somewhere it says Wisdom of Joyce Reynolds or whatever. And she gives the wonderful gift and lays it out for us how to practice that.
I really like that. One thing that I do is I'll write a grocery list. So it'll have groceries, but off to the right, I'll write down new TV. I'll just start writing these things that are not in the grocery budget. And within the week, something will happen to support it.
Excellent.
So, but I love that idea of doing it in the morning though, like when you're just waking up. That's awesome. Love it. Thank you.
And gratitude too is another piece of it, right? Because whatever we're grateful for grows.
Right.
So putting in gratitude and putting in a little disclaimer, right? You know, that this happens with blessings or appropriately, or, you know,
Yes.
something
The
like
highest
that.
good of all.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So that's
Yeah.
your little disclaimer, right? Your contract, your legal deal on the bottom.
Yes.
I love that. I'll have to work on that one a little bit more myself.
Yeah.
Getting better with it.
And I wanted to describe a little bit what internal family systems is for people who don't know what it is. Dick Schwartz created this model. He's a therapist and teaches this to therapists. I am not a therapist, but I am a licensed minister, like I've been saying. And because of that licensure, I was allowed to take all the classes and do the work. So the premise is there's our true self, our Buddha brain, our Christ consciousness, our angelic, our goddess self, who has no preferences, no likes or dislike. You want to ruin your life? That's okay. I love you. Oh, you want to be the best person ever? That's okay. I love you. Right? That's where they stand. Almost nothing to say. Nothing to add. Like, it's okay. And then there's all these egoic parts of us. The part who wants to be a good person, the part that wants to win, the part that wants to be the best, the part that doesn't feel adequate, the part that has a low self-esteem, the angry part, the selfish part, the needy part. Okay, you see all these different parts. You could go into the archetypal thing, right? The jokester, the king, the whatever. So there's just all these parts. Each emotion could be a part. And each part of us has certain things that they will say over and over in our head. And then we'll be like listening to the tracks, right? And we're thinking it's one thing up there just spinning around. But if we slow it down, we're like, oh, that's that part. Oh, that's the judgment part. Oh, that's the jealous part. Oh, that's the insecure part. And then once we go into the internal family systems, into the subconscious, where all these parts are talking from, and we're just hearing it on the conscious level. Conscious is like 10% of the subconscious, which is 90% of our thoughts and reactions to life are already pre-programmed in our hard drive of our computer. So we go into the subconscious and start chipping away at the iceberg, you know, and then the conscious, that 10% above the water, starts shifting and changing. So in our conscious mind, we're listening to all these parts talk all day long. And we think it's one part, it's not. And we think we're thinking those parts, but we're just the observer going, Is this familiar with anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in the subconscious, we try to take out the big players who are hogging the mic all the time, and then they can calm down and we have more space to breathe and to actually listen to our parts and talk to our parts. So that's the premise of, you know, the internal family system.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I'm just thinking about now, does that have to do with also our younger selves?
Definitely.
Okay, because that's the piece. I mean, I know with me personally, I know that was a big piece, you know, different things that happened, the trauma, you know, in my life as a younger person, and that continued. So it was like this cycle and this thing. And I just kept asking, why does this keep happening to me? Why, you know, and so it's like I was this magnet growing up to abuse. And so, I mean, I know, you know, healing that younger child has definitely changed who I am today. And so it definitely hits a chord when you're talking about the internal family system. So I know that would definitely, I mean, for me, be very beneficial. And so, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, totally. Most of our, unfortunately, and it's kind of funny because spiritual jokes are not really funny, you know, because usually I'm the butt of them. But then later you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. Usually we start waking up consciously around 3 or 4 years old. So whatever's going down and whatever we've concluded, right there, you know, I'm crying and screaming and nobody's coming. So our little brain is like, well, maybe nobody loves you. Oh yeah, that would make sense, right? Or maybe you're not worth anybody to come, like they're busy, everybody's more important than you. Oh yeah, so this, everyone else is more important than me. A 3-year-old is running my career, right? You know, is running my relationships, is running my money, is running, like, and you're like, wait, no, because that no one's ever gone back to the 3-year-old and said, hey, it's okay, I got a better idea. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's such fascinating work. And I mean, I've done past life regression for healing. You know, I have chronic pain issues from that accident years ago. But it was really I mean, I was surprised. The first session we did together, she caught me so, like, with my pants down at my ankles. I swear, because here I kept thinking, well, yeah, I know about these things that happen. Then there's, well, yeah, whatever, you know, and I kept brushing over it and brushing over it. And I'm like, I've done all these different healing modalities, done all this different healing work on myself. You know, I'm like, I'm nailing it. I'm doing really good. And then I do a session with Ursula and we get to this thing and I'm like bawling my eyes out. And after that, I was so surprised because it was something that I kept glossing over. It was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know I had to do that. It just happened. But there was this little me inside that was so angry and hurt and upset and had her voice taken away from her. And when we hit that, you know, going into it, I really had no clue. I was like, yeah, I have this little thing. Let's see what we can find. It's all good. And we get there, and here's this little part inside of me that's just like, I miss my mommy. Who are you? Where have you been all these 50 years? You know? Like, what? So yeah, and we ended up hitting past lives. We've hit stuff with my siblings. I mean, it's incredible every time where we went in and I was kind of like focused in one direction of, you know, yeah, I think it's kind of in here. I got this thing going on. Like for me, whenever I hear people lie, I shake. I mean, like I have tremors. My husband would come home and he would be like, what happened? You're shaking. That's bad news, you know? If I'm sitting here like this when I'm ready to just, I never really understood why I was having these episodes. I mean, these were really traumatic episodes where I would be shaking and my voice is tremors and I could barely get my words out and all of these things. And I never understood it, but I've had it for so long. It just was like, this is just what happens when you get upset.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
we found her. I called her the bitch. Ursula is much sweeter. She called her my truth speaker inside, who really struggled about, you know, being able to have her own voice and feeling safe enough speaking truth, feeling safe enough that she has something to say of value that has a worth to it. My goodness, I had no clue. She got me in there and whoo, and you know, dealing with the emotional healing of it, you know, so it's not just revisiting the trauma, it was revisiting the emotions that I was feeling in those deep moments that I was being told by people older than me, no, you can't feel this way, no, you can't talk that way, you know, all of these no's. And she hit me there and man, talk about melt. And yeah, it took me a few days of integration afterwards, which I would love you to talk about your follow-up programs with everybody too, because not a lot of people do that. And that's one thing I really am so grateful for with you, Ursula, is that you do follow-up calls and check-ins and how are you feeling? Are you chaos still? How's the integration happening? Rather than just like, okay, we had this amazing session and you're like a complete mess by the time we hang up, even though, the cleanup is happening, but you just went through a major subconscious reworking of memories and trauma.
Mhm.
And a lot of healers will just like, okay, we're done. See you next time. And poof.
Mm.
And Ursula doesn't do that. No.
Yeah.
I really love that.
It's important because, like I said, I've done all that healing, and you're in another world, right? Where we've just skipped the timeline. We're in the 3D. We're going from 3D to 5D, 7D. Who knows where we're going? We're going quantum. We're going into the theta, or sometimes like we go so deep that people can't talk, and I know what's going on, right? I'm like, okay, how are you doing now? And they'll be like, blah. So yes, because we're traveling, just like when you go on vacation, you come home, you can't go right back to work the next day. People try, but it's a big mess, right? You need to land, you need to have a weekend, just regroup and then get back in. So I even tell them, just treat yourself super gentle, super kind. It's almost like an energetic surgery. Where this is an outpatient kind of thing. So just take it easy. Don't deal with any conflict. Don't watch any negative movies. Like, self-care, be super kind to yourself. This will last from 12 to 24 hours. And if sometimes, like you and I had a giant session recently, I think I checked in with you a couple of times because I knew what was going on. So just like I can tap in what's going on in the session, I can also tap in with the client and say, okay, how are they doing? They're good. Okay. And I can call anyway, but I'll be like, something's not right. Let me just check in. And someone will go, oh, I was just crying. How did you know how to call? Or I was just thinking about you. How did you know how to call? So that happens often too. But we really do, because think of the pain that we've been carrying for all that time. We've just been storing the pain or storing the anger or storing the fear. And then we go and then we finally can let it go. And I always use the example like carrying a heavy suitcase. If you're carrying it through the airport, carrying it up the stairs, you just make it happen. And not until you put it down, you're like, oh my God, that thing was heavy. So that, oh my God, is the thing that we feel after a good session. So I just want to be there comforting, because I know you need to be brave to do this work. And that's why, people, when they're fed up, that's when they come to me. So it takes a considerable amount of bravery to come in and do the work. And we feel alone sometimes on the spiritual path, for sure. So if you have another weirdo, like, hey, how you doing? They'll be like, oh yeah. You can't tell your workmate, like, oh, I just, faced my inner monsters last night. They'll be like, that's nice. The report's due by 4. you know what I mean? So this is somebody you can actually talk to. So I just want to be gentle and kind, because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, that's got to take a lot of energy too on the client's part for releasing all of that, and how exhausting after that one would feel. So I can imagine and put myself in that place of what that would feel like, what that would look like. So you're right. I mean, like you said, taking a vacation and going to work the next day, no, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So to take that time and just to kind of process everything too, and to let your body just be. And it's that healing will take place, and it's that release. I mean, let me ask you this. So after a session like that, does it continue on an energetic level to keep releasing?
Yeah. And because I put that in the prayer work, that this continues to unravel.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
then,
so they're going to feel that.
Yes. And even when we close out and finish the session, like everything ends up good, right? So it's like, you like a surgeon would sew the wound and put the bandages on. So same like that. So there's a completion at the end, but the system has been upset. So it's almost like a chess board, if you will. and everybody's positioned. So we're like, oh, we're taking that guy out. Like, you know, this one is time for you to go, right? Thanks, but no thanks. So we're in a way repositioning our parts and putting in more love and soothingness into the system. So the system's just like, oh, you know, I don't have to hold that breath anymore. I don't have to, you know, be suspicious anymore. I can relax about that anymore. But what's really happening is the tension that was there before is like, you know, bellowing off in a way. So when we're done with the session and people are like, oh, do you see in person? You know, and I'm like, no, I do it on Zoom. And they're like, oh, I want to do it in person. I'm like, look, you don't really want to get in the car and have to drive after this. So it's in the comfort of their own home. It's in their bed or their couch with their blankie on, and they're laying down so they can go very, very deep. And then I just say, okay, we're closing out, you know, I'm going to log off. Please stay there 15 to 20 minutes, you know, and just relax and wake up and come into your, you know, space. Because sometimes people want to pop into their ego and so I'll log off and then I'll follow up the next day.
Nice.
Gentle. This is serious work, and my approach is gentle.
Yeah. Natasha, do you have any other questions?
I was just going to say that when I do a healing on a client, like I will do their 3 healings, if they're like having a more serious issue with their health. But I will always include a session of happiness coaching afterwards to discuss the patterns that cause the ailment. So we can look at their lifestyle and we can discuss changes to their lifestyle so they don't have it again. Because if they're not changing the patterns, it's going to come back. So I totally know what you're saying there. And I love IFS. I think it's very, very powerful healing modality.
Yeah, we're going in and talking to the pattern itself, you know, sometimes talking to the ancestors, like Shannon was saying, sometimes past lives, because the carryover is, you know, the storyline is so strong. So we're really reprogramming the patterns themselves. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That causes the deeper healing so they can they're just living their life from a higher vibration.
Yes.
Better choices, feel happier, you know, healthier, all of that kind of thing.
And this is the way we were meant to, Natasha. You know, this is our natural state, to be happy, to be childlike, to be playful, to be able to trust or at least discern. Like this person's okay, that person's not okay. Like an animal. Animals know, you know, they instinctively know, but somehow ego has been trained that out of us. So, you know, we really are meant to have, this, in my mind, is heaven on earth. Really.
Yeah, it's what you make of it.
Yeah.
It really is. And I don't think like the average person out there has any idea how their ancestors are affecting them. They have no idea. This is not anything that's that lost part of our knowledge.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked anybody in today's age that's in America, the European, they still have better traditions, but in America, you know, they couldn't say that even the name of their great grandfather, much less know anything of the story. Before TV, radio, that's all we heard. It was like, oh no, we're listening to that story again about the great grandfather who came over on the Mayflower. Like, oh, come on, right? And now we're like, who? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's so true. Share with everybody a little bit about the Twin Hearts meditation and what that is about, because that's a wonderful, wonderful meditation. And I know you've been practicing it weekly and teaching it, facilitating it. Let me correct that. Facilitating it for others for what, 9 years now?
Yeah.
Long time.
I started in my living room in 2008. And then just outgrew each space along the way. So weekly, and I do this regularly myself, but this is back to the pranic healing. The teacher of pranic healing is Master Choa Kaksui. He was super brilliant. The more I, study who this man was and how he was, I just have such like utmost respect for him. How one person put this body of work together and spread it to countries all over the world and 22 books and CDs. So he, in his genius, put together this little 21-minute meditation. And it's a guided meditation, because when people first start doing meditation, they think, oh, I'm going to sit here quiet for 10 minutes. Good luck with that. That's the hardest one. Okay. So this is a very simple meditation, and he puts us to work because our ego wants to do, right? So he says, okay, put your hands like this and bless the planet with loving kindness. And he leads us, he uses the prayer of St. Francis, where there's hatred, let me sow love, and he just walks us through it. And he says, feel the love, feel the sweetness. So he's gauging our emotions, and we're totally invested. Like the mind really wants to participate, because it's like, yeah, this is important. So the chatters slowly, not the first time usually. And then we give techniques on how to, deal with the chatter. And then we're working and we're doing this. But the brilliance is, whatever you give, so shall you receive. So we're bringing in this energy, and it's kind of sloughing away all of the, negative feelings within ourselves and cleaning our channels so that we can give even more. So it's focusing mentally, emotionally, our intention is there. We're physically holding our hands there. And there's just this beautiful thing that happens to us. And people just come back week after week and they're like, yeah, this is working. I'm feeling calmer. I'm sleeping better. I'm getting along with my family. I was able to react in a different way than I usually do. And people see the changes. So it's a really beautiful gift, and we have a community around it. And I do it online so everybody can come. And then it's also in person for the people who are local here.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah.
That sounds beautiful.
Good. I hope you girls can come. And then, anybody who's listening, they're more than invited.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a really amazing meditation. And there's also the exercises before and the exercises after, which the first time I did it, I was kind of like, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be doing this meditation, and I'm doing these stretches and exercises. But once you've done it one time, it's like, oh,
it made
it so much easier to engage in the actual meditation part, because all the extra energy has like sat down and said, okay, now we can focus and do this. And I really like that part about that particular meditation compared to other meditative practices, because I'm a busy mind person for meditation. I can't do that silence thing.
And for me, I can't sit still. Like I am on the move, I'm walking, I'm moving. When people are sitting, I'm standing. Like I'm like, go, come on, let's go. So I cannot sit still for 20 minutes. But after I do the exercises, I'm checked out, because we hold, like you're saying, tension in the body, right? We hold anger, we hold, but just we do these exercises, and they were designed specifically to release the energy in our body. And our body's like, can I sit down, please? And you're like, yeah, we'll sit down right now, and it's like the brilliance of Master Choa. He's like, I know how to get you to sit down. We're going to work you for a minute. But in the meantime, there's so many strategies to get us to sit still and to be in our body. Because his another way he's brilliant is a lot of meditations take you out, right? So you're like, oh, I'm in the stars, I'm floating in the galaxy. But he's like, look, y'all, you have a physical body, bring it in, go get that energy and bring it in and use it for your health. Use it to be inside of you. And that's, I think it's brilliant, because I don't know too many other teachings who even think of that.
That's true. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, everybody wants to get out of the body.
Yeah.
We did everything we could, all this great planning and everything to get into it. And then we're here and we're all trying to figure out the ways to get out.
Because it's painful.
Yes.
Right. So, but then you heal the pain with the internal family systems. And then you realize, like, wow, You know, I'm a physical being on this amazing planet. And that's back where Natasha and I were saying, this is heaven on earth. And these things are amazing. The human body is like mind-blowingly incredible. So we should inhabit it. We should animate it.
I was going to say, yeah, when you're doing any kind of spiritual work or your everyday physical work, you just want that nice balance of new Mother Earth energy in your body and source energy, but really nicely balanced in your system before you do a healing, say, or anything like that. So you're not scattered.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I like his ideas. Really good.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So Ursula, what do you have going on right now? Are you teaching any classes? Where can people find you?
Good question. Thank you. See, another good question. So I have my next chronic here in the spring and the fall. Last class we had 25 students because of our current situation here. So there's plenty of space for everybody, and I'm only teaching it in person. This stuff is really energetically conveyed, and it's not appropriate to teach it online. So I teach it in person. Shannon came, another person from another state came, another lady. So it's worth flying around to come. And I'm not the only person who teaches it, but many of my students are like, I'm not taking the next class until you're released to teach it, because they like the way I teach it. So you can get this teaching anywhere, just to let people know that. So that's this coming up. Also, I'm teaching a spiritual laws class. So practical spiritual laws to live by, because you can study stuff, but if you can't use it and apply it in your day-to-day life, like, it's just good information. But for me, I'm all about application. So I'm going to be teaching the laws and principles that I live by and that I use regularly. So I've studied all of that stuff, right? And it's like, okay, this works and this works. And the rest of the stuff is nice, but these two work. So it's going to be a year-long program, and it'll be twice a month. It's not on my website, but if anybody reaches out to me on Facebook or any of my social media, is my first and last name. So I have a YouTube that, thank you, Tina, for looking at. Facebook, my website is ursulalentine.com. So those are my next two classes. And I do one-on-one sessions. So someone will have an intro session. They'll see that this works, and then they sign up for a 6-month series. And again, I meet them twice a month, and we really do an entire body of work. I have an intake form that I use, and it's like on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel about this, that, and that? We go through 3 pages. So 1 is dying. How do you feel about your relationship with whatever? I feel like this is dying. And the other one, 10, is peaceful. So one of the last clients that went through her 6-month series, we did her scoring, and she rose 50 points, 50 points across her pages. Oh, wow. So that was a lot of incredible things. And the funny thing is, she had no idea at the amount of growth that she went through, because just like Natasha and I were saying, when you unburden those things, you start like, oh, okay, this is more normal. Okay, I feel better. Okay, I'm freer. So you don't remember how stressed out or burdened, just like when we sick and we're having a cold, you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, this is back to normal. So at the end of 6 months, you feel like, yeah, this is how I should be. But you don't realize how much you were suffering. So that's why we have this calculator, and 50 points of change within, and she didn't even realize it. Basically, that's the gentleness that we were talking about earlier.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, I will definitely be reaching out to you.
Please.
So that I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for giving us that information when your next classes are. That meditation, I'm definitely going to look at as well. And I encourage everybody listening to, check Ursula out, sign up for some classes. You won't be disappointed, and you will definitely feel better after. So I want to.
She also has a couples as well. I want to
Yes.
mention that
Yes.
because I've been eyeballing it myself over here. But yeah, and not a lot of people think about that. That one ends up on the spiritual path and the other one may not. But you're in a relationship, or you might be in a marriage, or whatever your context is of your relationship. And so she does have couples as well, where you can do, I believe it's individual and then together. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll work with each partner, because so if I'm in a relationship and somebody else is there, that person more than likely is going to be pushing on my triggers, right? Because that's just how this funny thing called life works. So instead of blaming that person, which never gets any traction, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't solve any problems, you can say, oh, yuck, I got this trigger here, right? So you can do your own healing work with the trigger in the internal family system. So you remove this, you deactivate that bomb, right? That goes off every once in a while. So you just calm this stuff down. And then of course the same goes with that partner, and you de-trigger that. And then when I do the couples and they bring them in together, there's patterns that are running, right? That whole legacy of their family dynamic, of course you're going to marry or be attracted to somebody that's familiar, right? Because anything that's familiar, even if it's abuse, familiar equals love. So if you have a little yelling and screaming going on in your household, and then you're loud person, yeah, I love you, right? And then you're like, oh, it's too noisy, right? It's like, wait. So anyway, so then when I bring the two parties together, we sit down and we identify patterns. Okay, when this part of me goes into this, like running program A, right? I get defensive, and it sounds like I'm attacking. And then this person goes into B. Oh, whenever I feel attacked, I retreat. Oh, whenever someone retreats on me, I feel scared. They go into C. Oh, when somebody disappears on me, I go into anxiety because I feel abandoned, right? So then there's these patterns that keep running, and no one knows it. But if you guys can identify, like, oh yeah, what does that part say when that person's in that zone? They say these things. Oh yeah, I hear you say that all the time. You know what else you say? You say this. Okay. So they both start tracking. So they're looking at the pattern instead of the pattern being, running them. And then put that diagram on the refrigerator in the bedroom mirror or whatever, and say, oh my God, we're running that pattern. And then we know, okay, let me work on that part. Let me work on that part. Or to have compassion to your partner and say, oh, that's why. Okay, I'm not going to say that anymore because I know that puts them in a place of trigger. I know that that's their trigger. So we get to communicate from a compassionate place because everybody's carrying some kind of pain and some kind of story going on. I just worked with a young couple, disasters, 2 disaster people, like you and like, oh my God, how, and we worked through it. And it was the most gorgeous, beautiful thing that I've witnessed in a long time, because the sincerity, the man was bawling and the woman was just like, please say the right things. My heart is in pieces, please. And he would deliver time and time again. It was so, so beautiful. It was just magical. Yeah.
I love to hear that, especially, with couples, they come from different households and whatnot. They come together and, you've got that dynamic, and to be able to go in and get to that root, it's absolutely beautiful. And wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Amazing.
Thanks for bringing that up, Shannon. I'm sure somebody, listening had to hear that. So thank you for adding that.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, ladies, does anybody have any questions before we close for this evening?
Looks like we're complete.
We're very complete, but I really hope that you will come back. that we would love to extend
Oh,
an
yes,
invitation for you to return
love to.
and do another interview with us. And maybe when you
Yes.
have some more things that you want to be able to put out there, because I love talking to you. You know that
Yeah, I do
we can
too,
talk for
Shannon.
hours.
Hours. Yes. Yes.
But
And
I'm
that's the laws class is a rolling class. So I will just continue to teach it. So anybody can jump in at any time.
Oh, very
wonderful.
nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, I know you have several different little free things out there that people can scope you out and learn a bit more about you and maybe get a little comfort in hearing you talk. Would you share those with us real quick?
Yes. If you go to YouTube, there's a lot of content out there. And that's why I am vulnerable there, because trust is a very big piece of going inside the internal family systems. If you want to do a connection call where we're just getting to know each other, you know, like, what do you do? How can I help you? Or a clarity call, which is you tell me what's going on with you and I can tell you how I work. And the clarity call is really a great thing, because even if you're not ready to do the work, we made a connection. You'll be getting on my newsletter, you know, once a month, no big deal. You'll be in touch and seeing there's so many like this podcast, for instance. This is be out in the world. I do lots of I just ran a women's meeting today with 16 women, and we talked about boundaries. So if you follow me, there's a lot of opportunities to attend the talks that I'm giving. Earlier this week, I was on a panel with other healers, and we talked about different modalities and things like that. So following me around through my newsletter and on Facebook, you can attend so many things. And then if you really want to do a private one-on-one conversation, sign up for the clarity call and we can have a direct connect there.
Okay, sounds great.
And then the Twin Hearts, that's donation based, and $5 to $20 is what everybody gives. So that's a super, super easy way to have access.
Very good.
I look forward to checking that out.
Good. I'm already excited to have you there.
And that's on Tuesday nights
at 7
Eastern.
p.m. Eastern time.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Ursula, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. I've learned a lot, and I know our listeners have learned a lot. It's been such a joy, and I can't wait for you to be back on. And I just want to thank you so much. You're just amazing. You're just amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to hug all of you because you're so precious, and I can just really feel your energy and the goodness that's coming out of you. You're all each very beautiful people, and I really appreciate the way you're all showing up in the world. I can totally feel that. And thank you, Shannon. Thank you for being my client, my friend, my savior. I have a short story. Do we have a minute?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So this is how I met Shannon. Okay. She was on Facebook. I'm getting feedback. I don't know what it is. Okay. Oh, it's still lit. Okay. Is it gone? Yeah. Okay. So Shannon was a person on Facebook, right? I didn't really know her. And I moved to California and I had a whole thing set up. And the whole thing was not working out. And Shannon Facebooked me and she's like, you have to meet my friend Hale, blah, blah, blah. You know, and I'm like, who's Shannon? Who's Hale? And so I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And then she's like, did you meet Hale yet? And I'm like, who's Shannon? Who's Hale? And I thought, you know, my job as a new person in a new community, you have to put yourself out there and meet new people. So my new job was meet new people. So I said, well, you know, I do have to meet new people. Hale's a great guy. You're really going to connect. You should connect with Hale. I'm like, who is this lady? So here's this number. Go check it out. So I'm like, hi, Hale. My name is Ursula. And this lady on Facebook, Shannon, he's like, I know. She's contacted me too. And I'm like, do you know who she is? And he's like, I kind of know who she is, but like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, we're supposed to meet. And he's like, yeah, come on, let's meet for lunch. So we went for lunch and she was absolutely right. He and I hit it off amazing. It was like he was the male version of me 2 hours, we're talking, we're connecting. He's a minister. We say the same words, the same language. It's like, oh my God, this is great. So I said, Shannon, thank you. It all worked out great. So then I'm up in Ojai, living in Ojai, and he and I were in touch, and he had said at one point that he rents his home out when he goes back to Atlanta. So I was trying to do business in Santa Barbara, and Ojai is kind of a trek. So he said, if you and your cat want to stay here over the weekend, you know, no problem, because I can tell you're one of me. And I said, great, that's so nice, thank you. And then something inside of me was like, oh, like Shannon with the shaking, right? And I was feeling anxious, and I'm not an anxious person. I'm a lively person, but not an anxious person. I'm like, what's this anxiety? You know, and it's like, get out. I'm like, oh no, like this is not good. And my living situation was not good because I wasn't going to get forward. Like promises had been made that weren't being delivered. So in this anxiety, get out, get out. I'm like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And then I remembered Hale. And I'm like, Hale, I know you're leaving. I can't afford the kind of rent that you're asking for to live there. You had offered I come in the weekend, you know, can I pay you half of what you're, you know, asking for? I can afford that. And he's like, yeah, come on down. A week after I moved into his place, I caught on fire. And I ended up living at Hale's place for like almost a year because of Shannon.
Wow.
That's how we met.
Wow. That is incredible.
Holy.
So that spirit, you know what I'm saying? That spirit weaving through her, coming to me. And then here, we didn't know. We were like, thank you, Shannon. That's it, right? No, I moved back to California. Shannon reaches out. We do some healing work. Shannon becomes a pranic healer. I help her do that. She said, oh, she wrote a book, her stone book, Wisdom of Stones. I wrote a book, and I was like, Shannon, will you edit my book? So she read through my book. You see how spirit is just weaving us, weaving us, weaving us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I love that story. And you never know, right? In the moment, you don't know what that is or the whys, and then you find out later. So
yeah.
cool.
And it was one of those things because I had been watching her making her trek across the country with her kitty Samantha, and then I see her on video in Ojai, and I used to live in Santa Barbara area. My children were born in Santa Barbara, California.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, my first husband was from that area, so I lived out there for 10 years, knew carp, knew all that area. So I'm like, oh, she's in my old hunting grounds. I know where she is. And so like, oh. And Hal was from South Carolina, and I'd been keeping up with what he was doing, and he's in my group. And it was one of those things of I'm seeing her on video shooting Ojai on the screen, and I'm hearing Hal over here. Tell her about Hal. You need to message her about Hal. And I'm thinking, this lady's going to think I'm nuts, right? Okay. And they're like, Hal, have you sent that message yet? Send it. So I did. I messaged her, and then I messaged Hal and went, so I know this lady. Well, I kind of know this lady, but she's moving. She's
That's
and it
spirit.
started so many things, and I am so grateful.
So am I.
Grateful.
That's why I wanted to bring this story up, is because I'm grateful. Yeah.
So listen to those voices, people, when they're telling you about introducing so-and-so to so-and-so. Don't judge it. Don't question it. Just do and leave it. And you never know where it's going to be. Because even with that, I was like, look, I'm not trying to fix you up, okay? This is not me like trying to do a hookup here, okay? I just know you two need to meet. I couldn't let it go. I was just like feeling this thing that these two people have got to meet. For whatever the reason is, I don't know, but I just here. I ended up getting so gifted by it.
Yes. We can definitely be strangers in the 3D, so we think. But on the higher levels, we all know each other.
That's right. That's
That's
right,
right.
Natasha.
Exactly.
I'm so grateful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, all right, everyone. So glad to be here with you this evening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Ursula, so much. Lots of love and hugs to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.